participate, or to provide regular updates for your back to staff about what's going on. So that's kind of the big initiative that's coming, that directly falls within your guys' purview. The other one that's coming that we're going to start having public information sessions on fairly soon, that'll be for the hazard mitigation plan, but also the COVID relief plan. A lot of those things are focused on how the community in our vulnerable areas to the coast can respond to disasters and those things. So your discussion that you've had about alternative boat ramps would be something that would fit into those discussions and those opportunities. So as soon as those things get more formalized, I think someone will be back to you guys for either participation or maybe a secondary review from the group that's working. But I think those things are definitely coming in 2015. So we'll look ahead to the next calendar year. But that's a good direction that the town is heading in. And I know we have consultants working on the plan. The town's paying for them to do that, but obviously there's no recommendation. So there's a lot going on, so
yeah,
sounds it.
I try to keep it focused to what it's free.
Do you know anything about the current activity at the Children's Beach boat ramp?
I drive by it every day, hop out and take a look and see what's going on for town inspections purposes. It looks like they've made some significant progress. It looks to me like they're about ready to install the section of the sheet pile for the cofferdam to really get going, but I know they had a training on site today, so I'm interested to see what they got in. It's all the sheet pile present, but they have some of the other pre-work for that. Their siltation boom is installed. All of their other kind of in the water protections are in place, and I know they're still shooting to have it done in January. Is the hopes. I would say that because we don't know
Weather
can turn on us and middle of January turn into the middle of February, but I think it's their intention to have it done sooner than later. So I'm sure they push really hard on that day today to get extra work done while they're here and while the weather's good. So it looks to me like they're at least on schedule. Go too much farther than that because I'm not sure, but it looks to me like they're pretty close.
And there haven't been any issues with it being out of commission, no emergencies?
None that I'm aware of.
Boaters needing to get
I know
out.
Sheila did a pretty good job reaching out to the guys that traditionally have used the boat ramp for commercial fishing, for commercial scalloping. We made the account here available to them for either nothing or discounted rate to tie up for the season instead of trailing everything. And then I think the hopes are, if it gets open early, the kind of the second half of the commercial fishing season, the boat ramp may be open. So, again, not my project, so I don't want to make any promises that are there, but I think that's the hopes.
Thanks for filling us in on that. You mentioned earlier you've had some commercial scallop license inquiries. Refresh me on like getting a license away.
Sure. So there's kind of two provisions that are kind of in play for someone. If you were to walk in my office today, kind of two things that are in play. The first one is just by regulation, anyone that doesn't hold a license by the 31st of March is subject to a 30-day late start. So that starts from the day that you bring in a completed application of payment, drop it off at our office for review. That starts your 30 days that you can't take scallops. That's kind of the key word for that is you can't go harvest your catch. For someone who's never held a license before, they would enter into the 40-day apprenticing program. So the difference between those two is the 40-day apprentice program, you can still count the time that you go. So if you went out today and you didn't harvest any, and you were just with someone else who took 5 boxes, you could count that day against your 40 days of apprenticing and run that 30-day late start at the same time because you're not personally harvesting scallops. So people that we've come in, some of them have taken kind of taken that up and said, well, I'm trying to get my license, so I'm still going to go out during 30 days, just call for somebody, and they just take their $5 limit, and then as soon as the 30 days is up, they're off and rolling. So, there's always some dread with 30-day late start, because people can get started and go, but it's there for a purpose, so people just don't jump into it. That's good for the guys who do it. So, the late start is not a good concept.
No, but it wasn't always there, and correct me if I'm wrong, was it instated, where it gets out right away, it's a good season, people want to jump right in November, and I thought it was more about waiting through November, obviously not, but are there any provisions to speed that up? If it were somebody that's scoped before or has had the apprenticeship, are there any provisions to expedite them getting their license to be able to bring in a limit?
No.
None.
So the way the regulation actually reads, and I wish I had that one in front of me, but that provision about late starts is actually a sentence at the end that says, no waivers are to be granted to this provision. So if you wanted to try to appeal to the Board of Selectmen to change the regulation and then go, you could. I will tell you, by the time you advertise your public hearing, have your public hearing, and then advertise the change to the regulation, it's faster than your 30 days. So that's there. And again, the late start predates, I think it predates, it definitely predates my time with the town. And it's definitely not a new one. They used to grant what they call hardship licenses. And the issue that kind of came up, and when we redid the regulations, kind of the discussion that the panel of fishermen and folks had was, who's the arbiter of what's a hardship? Because everyone would come in and say, I had a hardship, I lost my job, or I was sick, or I just simply forgot to buy my license. Like, people would come in, and it was something that you're inviting a lot of discretion into that, and no one wanted to take on a role of being well, this hardship was a hardship, and this hardship was not a hardship, so we're going to grant them the license and not the license. It just was difficult to set a criteria to, and it was something that people would come to SHAB and discuss, and the SHAB would wade through. It was something that with the regulations got redone, we wanted to clarify, because it just made everyone on the board at the time very uncomfortable with that process.
Ever make that decision?
I will say, between, there have been very few times where exceptions have been granted. Again, before my day, I remember one specifically where someone was serving in the active military, was discharged after March 31st, was on active duty in Afghanistan, came back, and he was granted the license because we're like, well, that makes sense. You were serving the country, we're overseas, like, you really shouldn't have been worried about your license. That was one where the board, I remember, said, okay, I think that's probably still something that we probably work with someone to resolve, if that makes sense, but it gets very difficult to weigh out someone's ability to get a license. So,
Just a question for clarification
Sure.
for the minutes. When you say the 30-day late start, what does March have to do with it? It's before March or after March?
So the cutoff for your commercial license for the following season is March 31st
Yeah.
of the previous year. So if you have all of your paperwork in on March 31st, you're eligible to start commercially based golfing on November 1st.
Oh,
If you
okay.
walk in the door on April April
Yes,
1st,
I got it.
you're waiting till December 1st. That was the provision, and I honestly think, if kind of talking to some of the guys that have been in the fishery a long time, most of them supported March 31st as the date originally, because it's also the end of commercial season, and those guys said it makes a lot of sense that when you're still harvesting and money's still coming in, to go pick up your license for the next year before you're looking for income over the summer and you're trying to do something. So I think it's always kind of historically the same. Again, I
some reason, Jeff, I vaguely remember the provision coming into place because of people wanting to jump on board at the last minute because of a good season. And that, of course, was before the economy was really booming on land here, and people would weigh out, well, gee, I can make more money on the water than I can on land. And I guess my concern today is, should it be looked at in a way where some type of provision, I mean, because I know guys who have a license and they're not fishing, and I think to myself, boy, it's a good season, wouldn't it be nice to harvest what's available out there and get them on the market? And I mean, people aren't rushing to become a fisherman anymore, and so it makes
Sometimes.
me, yeah.
Well, it's tough too. I mean, I understand, and it's something that we're always happy to have the discussion, but the economics of it can be complicated. I mean, this is a season where I know when I've had guys that sell, have specifically said to guys, don't bring me a double limit because we're not selling them fast enough to offload them. They're better to stay in the water than to stay in the fridge. So there's a point there, and it's not something that we get involved in as much as there. I mean, that's a good discussion for you guys to have, probably participate in like the Shellfish Association and those guys for how that's translating. I mean, we're more interested in the biological health of the fishery, but it's an interesting discussion to have with more people entering when they're already maxing out what's there and holding for a while, and how that works together. So, yeah, that's not something that departmentally we focus on, because as soon as we get involved in the economics of it, it will make a mess of us. So I'm much happier to say things like, we're not seeing any seeds, so it's going very well. People are getting their limits. And we're not seeing any real significant concerns. And that there are other places like here in NSA for guys to say, we're getting ripped off, or we're not selling enough, or we're having issues with marketing, or those things. It's a different discussion. You can certainly have it. I mean, I think you'd have some thoughts on it, but there's definitely a distinction between guys that are considered to be trading fishermen and guys that are considered to be fishermen. So I think you'd have a real mixed conversation on it.
Yeah. Just a thought. Have you heard of a glut in the market with scallops?
No, I know for a fact. I mean, we talk to those guys, and we check and shanties and do things, and we hear threats from the fishermen about, we are bringing them double limit. We've been told to only bring a single or those things. I know there's been a little bit of a stack up for just how fast they can get rid of them.
That's interesting.
Seasons that are doing better in other ports as well. I mean, there are other spots off the mainland, and some of the spots on the mainland that are getting scallops. Some of the spots on the mainland haven't historically had harvestable catches that have kind of fed into it. And I know base scallops are going. I think the farthest spot I know of, one of the guys is selling to a place in Arizona, so they're definitely traveling. They go all up and down the East Coast, so I'm sure there's spots. I mean, I don't know how many are getting sold to Louisville, Kentucky, or Nashville, or somewhere like that. And they're interested in them, but it seems like that there's either needs to be increased distribution effort or other marketing things. Again, that's trying to tell those guys how to do their business. I just make sure that there's good grass and scallops and hopefully things have water.
There's a quick comment to that end. I know you don't, but in New York City, I mean, my son just called and we're going down there for Christmas, and he said, "Can you bring some scallops?" He said, "They're $61 a pound here in Manhattan."
I can tell you that's the second highest price I've heard. So
I mean, I was blown away by that. So before I pulled my boat 10 days ago, I went out and I scalloped, you know, and because I was just blown away. I said, really?
I can tell you, I had a friend who also lives in the city. He goes every year and he lets me know what they're selling for. I'm always curious. And one of the spots he checked, he said the highest price he saw was 63.
Wow.
Was how much?
63.
Which is crazy to think that right now, the guys, I know I say I don't care
That's
about
what I said.
economics of it, but I love to follow it. It's interesting to me. I know the guys right now are getting paid about 11 pounds.
Jesus.
How much?
11. So
Wow.
you can play scale of economy, and I'm sure to get to New York City that it goes from a spot here to a spot and then to another.
Another spot.
It builds up as it goes. But I think tracking any fishery is always interesting to see how
Yeah.
the price adjusts and how always the fisherman is always at the bottom doing all the real hard work and really getting a small piece of the pie. Well, that's just how it works.
I just wonder if the artificial raising of a price in a place like New York just doesn't let the stuff move, and these guys are just impeding the market, just as an
I mean,
aside,
it could
right?
be something where, I mean, just to speak hypothetically, it could be something where it's just traveling through so many hands by the time it gets
Yeah.
marked up. It sits.
Yeah.
Or it's a really boutique market where if there was an easy way for it to get, I'm not saying direct fishermen in there, but just as an example, to get straight from sales to that market there, that would keep the price better instead of going sales to somewhere in New Bedford, and from somewhere in New Bedford to some wholesale dealer in New York, and then to the final resting place, and by the time you get there, it's marked up the whole way.
Isn't there somebody, and I can't remember who it is, somebody who lives in Sconset who does or used to freeze them and ship them directly?
I don't know.
Yep.
Air freight them, right, to
Yeah,
New York?
Ken Brasfield does.
Yes,
All the guys on
yeah.
island will do it too. They'll ship
Yeah.
to wherever.
Yeah,
Um,
Ken Brasfield, that's what it is.
Some spots in some states have issues, shellfish especially, not as much as scallops as other shellfish, have chain of custody issues, where you have to be able to document where they travel through. And it's the whole reason why you see, even on scallops, they're required by state law to have harvester tags to go with, because of sanitation issues and how they come out of the water and deal with it. And I know even at the state level, they've been talking a lot about base scallops, because you typically just see just the meat scope, not any of the guts. So your chance for shellfish packaging and things are very low.
Yeah.
But there are also spots that, not just here, but on the mainland too, that have been selling essentially scallops with the shell to go to places. So then, because they're in the shell, they're required to be tagged, and it just makes a mess of it. It's one of the reasons why all these guys have harvester tags now is if one place does it, everyone is doing it, because if they get commingled, there's issues with that custody. So if there is an issue, you have to go back. So like I always tell everyone, if you go into any seafood store and there are oysters or clams and you're going to get some, ask to see the tag, because that tag has to have where they're from, the date they were harvested, where they come to and from.
Interesting.
And that's all information, because there's nothing worse than, you're getting shiny fresh oysters that are there, and you look at the harvester tag and those oysters have been out of the water for a week and a half. Maybe you want to look at the other oysters. So, but that's something that, at least in Massachusetts, everyone by law is required to hold those, even for base scallops, you're required to hold those tags off the catch for a period of time for inspection along with food. So, it's part of the statewide shellfish sanitation program. But,
Apropos of biology, 2 quick questions.
sure.
First question is, has there been seeding of quahogs in Nantucket Harbor? Because when I went out for scallops, I just couldn't believe the number of 1.5-inch
Yes.
quahogs that were in the water. I mean, it was pretty incredible. I consider those pasta clams, and it was dangerous. I was very tempted,
Yeah.
you
So,
know?
There was in both Nantucket and Nantucket Harbor, there was a project that our department did in conjunction with Shellfish Association and the Land Council to do we just completed the second of 3 years of pretty large-scale cohort
That
seeding.
explains it.
And it was something that, I'm going to miscredit that Carl Sherlin really spearheaded through the Shellfish Association. And then some technical help from us, and the Land Council with some funds, kind of came together to release those. They've been doing a couple 100,000 cohogs for the last couple of years. The hopes are that the third year, this coming year, will get supplemented in the fourth year by cohogs that we're producing out of the hatchery at that point. So it's kind of a bridge there, but there are definitely spots where there's a lot of it.
I mean, I found one spot, I was blown away at what was coming out of the water.
So hopefully that we'll be
Yeah.
there, but we get involved because we have to use state approved hatcheries and do pathology and all kinds
Okay.
of stuff to make sure that there's no pathogens or disease or something that could be getting into our waters.
Second biology question is, we were talking about moorage for cruise ships that seem to be increasing in number in the main harbor. I thought that, I would think that anchoring those big boats must play havoc with the bottom, and that it would be a good idea if these big boats, rather than anchoring in the harbor, they might anchor in the Court of the Bay, where I would think there could be less damage, but I don't know that for a fact. So you, as the biologist, would it make a difference if you have multiple boats anchoring in the harbor or out in the Court of the Bay?
I think the answer is maybe. I know
Okay.
it's a terrible answer.
No, it's fine, because you haven't had a chance to look at it.
No, I mean, well, I will tell you that moorings and mooring fields are something we've been talking a lot about lately for a lot of different reasons. Obviously, it depends where, what the bottom substrate is. There are obviously areas in the harbor and in the mooring fields that the bottom type isn't just conducive to, growing eelgrass because the bottom isn't that nice, clean, sandy bottom that's mucky. There are other things that are there. So I think in limited numbers and in the right areas, if the safeguards are there for things like the water discharges, especially black water, kind of control over that, making sure that they're, not with fuel or doing things like that, certainly it could be possible. Would there probably be less impacts out in the Court of the Bay? I think probably yes. But I think in the right areas, you could try to minimize it as much as possible within the harbor. But I think it's something that having both options available is something that we're probably
And then to that end, would we be better off with a couple of moorings for big boats in the harbor or in the Court of the Bay again? I mean, instead of just having them drop anchor, do you think that would make a difference? Because we sort of hashed that around last time, I think. And I just think that,
Again, I mean, I think it really depends on the siting. I mean, obviously, moorings are always much preferred to anchors.
Okay.
For the fact that, at least for the season, if they're in and installed and you're not dragging or you're doing anything, everything's sized appropriately, you can at least isolate whatever disturbance or impact is to that specific area. Whether it's in the Court of the Bay, and there's good habitat for other things in the Court of the Bay, not just, base fellows or those things, but there's lots of good fish habitat, there's some other shellfish, where if you site it appropriately, and I think it's an area that I would like to see the town move into a bit more, is really, now that we're doing more regular eelgrass mapping and doing better water quality sampling, is really determining environmentally sensitive areas and thinking about those for, what moorings are going there and what uses are allowed in those areas. And then, which I hate to say, in the areas that are junk are good areas to concentrate your influence because it's an area that's already not in good condition. And then you can always have the Court of the Bay as a backup for dealing with those areas. Or I know Sheila's had instances where the harbor has been full and it sent people out. That to have that flexibility, I think, is something that's really key. But I I think making smart decisions about how everything's set up, and what uses are available in what areas is something like that. Don't want to make it more confusing than it needs to be, but I think we need to make it as friendly to the system in a whole as possible.
Well, I just brought that up because it was something we started to talk about, and I think with you being aware of that, that might be, this was sort of an entree into that idea that it may be something we take up some more in the future. So if you're beginning to look at it, I just think it's a good idea. I didn't expect you to have a set and fast answer.
I think it's something that we talk about a lot. We talk about, even at the big forum at the Great Harvey Yacht Club, where we're spending a lot of time and resources as a town and as a community on fertilizer, sewers, and innovative alternative septic systems. We've even talked about black water and gray water discharge, stormwater discharges. That, to me, you have the checklist of things that impact your environmental health as a whole in the harbors. And the more things that you can cross off from the bad or potentially bad side gives you a lot more credit on the good side, because it's not a big mystery that our environment changes can be globally affected, it can be in a very small effect, that if you can minimize your community's impact on your resource, if something happens, if there's a hurricane, if global carbon emissions go up, and forces nitrogen levels to go up again, because right now atmospheric emission is down, that fluctuates over time. If those things change, you can absorb those changes better. And I'm not saying that because we have moorings that are changed and those things are doing it, but to me it's just if you're crossing things off the list, you want to cross off as many things as possible and making better decisions about where we're putting impacts is one way to build credit for the good side.
Okay.
I just wanted, it wasn't part of your report, but you talked before a year ago about procedures for these violations of shellfish regs and due process types of issues. You're not really in the regs, but you said you guidelines.
Sure.
I think we have time.
All right, I'll flip those out to you. I'll send it to you right now. So we use the standard intake procedure, so we use the regular written warning ticket procedure, and all those tickets are filed with the clerk of courts and filed with the town clerk. We run those all through the police station because they're kind of the master keepers of all of those. And all those tickets, if you're issued an actual citation, the instructions for any sort of appeal to that are printed right on that ticket. So we make sure that people just give that in general. The same citation that we use for Health Conservation Commission, some police violations, building department violations. It's kind of our standard written ticket for appeal and set appeal to those
That's
violations.
good.
So the good news is we have written a few written warnings this year and very few tickets. It's very it's been an easy year for enforcement because scholars are high school classics and everyone kind of understands have tags and whole boxes. And really a big help to us this year is Sergeant Brinkowski has been really active as well. And it's amazing he's sending me messages how fast his life is something he's doing. But I'll send you the procedures that we use.
So is part of that procedure side of the warning and the appeal and sort of thing, do they deal with catches and that type of thing?
Yes.
Taking pictures and all that
Yep.
stuff we talked about?
Yeah, it's kind of our SOPs for anytime we take catches, it always involves photos and verification with photos of disposal, with taken. Unfortunately, I had to do it this year. We always have some sort of unique identifier on what they did catch with. This is the question you always get as well. We don't see it. We usually give, the fishermen also have an option if they want to come inspect before it gets disposed of, or if they want to witness the disposal. That's something that they are able to do. So, definitely what we're thinking of feel if they are excluded. In our experience, 9 times out of 10, someone gets the catch or part of the catch taken, they really want nothing to do with it. So,
So is that something that you can email or is it not good?
yeah, definitely. I'll definitely make an email to you. I think it's
Just for clarification on Carl Sherlin's Cohog project, I'm pretty sure he also was granted some funds from the Admiralty Club.
yes. I apologize for forgetting that. The Admiralty Club also funded the Matic portion of that project.
Yeah.
Originally, it was just going to be in the town level.
Yeah.
I always forget somebody.
I happened to stop into Carl's shanty yesterday, and he, another gentleman named Bruce, opened
Bruce Allen?
there. Yes, and so there were town scallops on one side of the bench, Nantucket scallops on the other, and as you say, they're all well-defined adult scallops. So I was wondering, any like violations with overstuffed crown boxes or?
No, I mean, it's something that we've been pushing for the last 2 to 3 years pretty hard to have level boxes. It's not as much a problem as it used to be. You don't see those days of like, I mean, we used to joke around and when we first made it very clear and included photos and the regulations of what a level box looks like. We just did kind of an informal look before that. And the guys that were really good at crowning forget about another box-to-box and quarter of scallops by crowning. And that's what they were trying to curb out by making sure that it's good level. No box is perfectly level. They're regularly shaped, they're round, and those things that are there. But it's been pretty good. There are times where guys push it, and then you just say, hey, it's not level, or it needs to be better, and it's easy to figure out. So, it's something they're pretty conscious of, and I'll be fair, the best policing for crowning are the guys that are going, because they'll see some guy pull up next to them, and be like, what are you doing? We all have to live with the rules. Now you're bending them, you're going to walk in, you're going to sell 60 pounds of scallops, now you sell 40 because you crown. Not happening. Okay, our phone range 32 pounds. That it's going on. So I'll be the change in the fleet in the last since we've been involved with them is they're very good at self-policing, and they don't take kindly to people pushing or bending the rules when they're all following it. And they are far more effective at curbing that behavior than any police officers can do.
All of a sudden, your gas tank's full of water.
I'm not saying that stuff still goes on. The tales of the 70s ratings are legendary, what happened to those and things, but they're very good about saying, and I also know guys that have shanties and things that open where they've said, you can't come here because, not this year, but even the previous years where they said, we don't think that catches of enough adults, and there's issues to see that you are not welcome here. You need to go find something else to go. And let them go somewhere else. And said, you can't come in here with that. Go away.
That's
And they won't always report them because they don't want to be that way, but as a whole, they're pretty good about keeping everyone on a fairly level playing field. And that's the only way it works. And it's the same thing with fertilizer is starting to turn that way, where we get a lot of reports from landscapers that are out when they see something that's bad. They won't ever say specifically who it is, or they won't leave their name, but you'll get the, hey, you should check out the crew on Burnell Street. There's some issues. I'm sure enough to go out and see it. So that's, again, when you have limited it's nice that they care about the rules and understand why the rules are there and why they're there.
Do you have an idea of how many boats are still out there in town in Nantucket, and is anybody diving?
Yep, there are guys diving. Tim Mooney's still diving. Bill Osley has been diving with a couple guys. So there's probably anywhere from 2 to 5 guys that are diving on a regular basis. And then boats kind of between the two. Daylight today's not a good day to count. The weather was so nice, but I'd say on average, Boat average, you're probably still seeing about 30 boats right now. Give or take. That's also give or take weather, what's going on. The one thing that we've seen is a lot of the double limit boats are converting to more single limit boats. So that's one change that's there. And then again, just traditionally, historically, Christmas time seems to be, in good weather years, the first real call of the fleet. And then it will, as the weather gets worse, it goes usually after Christmas, the first big weather event, you'll lose a solid percentage of the remaining guys. And then every weather event after that, just if the season's good. If the season's bad, you can go out pretty fast. Last year, by this time, we were down to like 15 boats on a good day. And it just didn't feel much time. So it's different. Different every year. So one piece of data I wish we would start tracking a long time ago was the number of actively fishing licenses and boats. They correlate the number of boats that come out to effort for fishing. So we can keep that record.
Any other questions for Jeff?
I have to sneak. I have to relieve. My wife has to be somewhere. I have to take the baby.
Go,
So-
go,
Thank
go.
you.
Thanks for coming.
Merry Christmas, Jeff.
Yeah, everyone have a
Merry
Merry Christmas.
Christmas.
And Happy New Year. I'll send that stuff up to you tomorrow. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Public comment. Old business, cruise ship moorings. Any other discussion?
I did contact somebody off island that might have some experience and recommendations. And he said, give me a little information, I have to check with this, doesn't usually deal with boats that size. But he thought maybe pyramid anchor, not sure if you know it's
Right.
pyramid. In the 10,000-pound range, which he thought would be somewhere in the $22,000 range. That's probably the American price. I don't know what it would cost to get it in the water from Nantucket. It's not something you put in the back of your average pickup
Right.
truck and haul out there.
$22,000 for 10,000 pounds.
For a chunk of concrete.
Wow.
And as you say, that's an America price.
That's in America. not in
Put it in the back of the truck. Dump it.
Well, you know, I was wondering to that end, if once you put one of those down, if it's in a non-scallop or commercially fishable area, could you just leave it there? You know? I mean, that would make more sense. And in fact, that could become structure that you could probably get black bass around and some other things. No?
No, well, those pyramids are designed.
Do they sink? Oh, okay.
So,
So there's not much above the water.
not much, just the chain.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, you would leave it in. I mean,
Yeah.
Unless we made an exception, every 2
Right.
years it would have to be inspected. But you
Right.
can do that by dive.
right.
The chain would have to be replaced
All right. If
maybe 5 years, give or take.
Yeah.
Depends,
if there's some non-viable areas, that sounds like a terrific idea.
Island is replacing.
particularly because
exactly how it's shaped, what it looks like, how it's manufactured. I mean, it sounds to me like something that somebody could actually make up a form for, and it could be filled with leftover concrete that, Toscana brings back and makes Jersey barriers out of them, out of their extra concrete, and you could do the same thing with that. Fill the form, and an extra yard comes in.
Because you'd have to have
It's $22,000 just.
some sort of engineering, because your
That's-
frame
that's-
would have to be secured with concrete.
Right.
Some
Mhm.
rebar or something, I don't
Yeah.
know what
Yeah,
the.
it would just be interesting to know. Of course, it would certainly.
We can just get concrete.
Well,
It's just a big form. Some sort of something. Those generally would have to be heavier. So, usually, I think somewhere in the 2 to 3 times range. So if you start with 10,000 pyramid, you might need 20 to 30,000 concrete.
well, the pyramid must
But
be
if you
made out
made
of
it that
concrete
shape,
also.
um,
Yeah.
and then, take out a barge.
May I offer a comment?
Please.
I spoke to the harbor master in Marion, Mass. recently, and they have been using helix moorings since 1991, and they've never had one fail, and they've never removed one. And I said, well, how do you, he said, chain that's above the ground oxidizes and has to be replaced. But he said, I'm using this only in reference to the eye, talking about the eye. And he said, no, the rest of it gets covered over, and so they never oxidize because they're never exposed to the oxygen. I mean, except for, I presume there's some oxygen in the mud, but never enough to do it. So I presume if those pyramids completely submerge in the mud or subsurface, sub bottom, that the same thing would happen. I mean, I don't know whether they're stainless steel or whether they're iron or what they are, but presumably if they cover over, they're not going to oxidize. That's the theory, and he said they've never had one fail in 25 years.
Wow. Did you ask him
They
about
mandate
shellfish
helix
and-
moorings for any boat over 25 feet.
Really? Wow.
Well,
And are they using chain or are they using bungee?
He said all
wires?
kinds of things.
Yeah.
He said that's the bottom. He said it's primarily a safety issue for them because they have less shellfish sensitivity, habitat sensitivity than we do. He said they do have some, but he said it's primarily a safety issue because I guess Hurricane Hugo, what was back in '91? Hurricane Bob. He said after Hurricane Bob, they just had a mass of boats that went ashore when everything failed, and so they, from a safety point of view, they just said, no, we're switching, and so that they've got it kind of gridded. They're in the ground. They're permanent. They don't move. If you want to sell yours, you find a buyer, And he said they kind of trade at a given. He said they kind of trade for like $1,500 a piece because you've got the initial. Kind of after a while, the price of the screw has kind of amortized itself. And so what you're really doing is you're paying $1,500 basically for the last few years of kind of a maintenance figure. The new chain, the diver going down, looking at it. So if people feel they can get $1,500, they kind of feel like the new guy coming along says it's the guy who wants to buy, and his only option would be go to the harbor master and find a space that he can put his down and then buy his own and have it sunk. But it's going to cost him a lot more than $1,500. So they seem, he said, it kind of just all sorts itself out. It's kind of interesting.
I kind of like that idea too, in that, I mean, with the wind that we had this summer, where my boat is moored in Nantucket Harbor, after one of the storms, the swings of some of the boats got really close. You know, and that's because they drag in heavy wind. I mean, you know, we had all that northeast wind, and the boats that were upwind to me really got a hell of a lot closer. But if you have something that's stuck in the ground, that wouldn't happen. That becomes, you know, another issue in terms of safety and longevity.
He said for smaller boats, especially in shallower water, they still have people using mushrooms, and they don't, you know, they kind of pay attention to it, but there still is that. But by and large, the bulk of the boats in the harbor are on helix moorings.
I thought one of the complaints was with the screw moorings was that the hook stayed exposed, and there was this was the myth that we heard, I think, at one of the meetings.
He said they're totally buried.
Okay.
They're totally buried,
Okay.
and they use GPS. Whenever there are two boatyards that put them in, it's kind of interesting. There are two boatyards to put them in. Whenever they put one in, they have to give the harbor master the GPS coordinates of where
Yeah.
that mooring is.
That's terrific.
So they know where every mooring is. So if it has to, and then what they have is, instead of having mooring handlers that are taking moorings in and out, they have a whole group of mooring inspectors. So your mooring handler becomes a diver, or has divers, and basically charges the same amount of money and does this. Instead of taking them out and putting them in, they go out and inspect them, and if they have to, they replace the chain under wire. They're not pulling them up and putting them back down. And so he said, yeah, we still have a viable service fleet or service industry for the moorings. It's just different than pulling them in and putting them back, you know, taking them out and putting them in.
So do they leave the chain on all winter, or
They leave the chain. Actually, I didn't get into that. What they do? They obviously put on sticks, but I don't whether they leave the chain on or not. I'm guessing they probably would, but I don't know. I don't think I specifically asked him that. He said they do. They do have both chain and what's the?
There was somewhere hydraulic had a hydraulic.
Yeah, what
pin
was the
somewhere.
one that we looked at that it's a manufactured name, and Sheila actually had the guy here. The bungee cord thing, and he said they have. So they have. That's kind of up to the boat owner. He said they don't really mandate what you have to have, but he said that the bungee cord type. He said they're obviously better because, I mean, not better. In terms of how many boats you can get in the harbor, you can get more in because there's not as much chain. It has to be, although he did say with the helix moorings you can shorten chain because and I'll tell you another story. But he said the only issue that he knows of with the non-steel, non-chain type of mooring tackle is that you might have somebody going around the harbor and with a prop nick it. Yeah. And he said that a prop will nick it, and he said, so you have to pay attention, but I mean, it's presumably standing like that, so you'd literally have to run over the mooring, I guess, probably. But he said that's the only. He said, you know, they've been doing all of this stuff for years.
Anyone, any opinions, Ken?
well, and the issue we keep running up in Chile training is scallop.
Yeah.
Moorings don't come out. So the variance.
Right.
So we have to keep eye, whatever it is, shoot down below the surface.
Right.
You have to move the chain, and then even if it's GPS, it's not going to be any good.
Right.
But if it's got a stick, a shortened
You
stick.
can't dredge, you can't scallop, it's anything sticking out. So that's, I still think.
Well, I think he's saying the stick is like replacing the mooring ball, like she does here with winter sticks. I mean,
Yeah.
If you've got a helix mooring or any mooring in the mooring field, if it's got a buoy on it, the fisherman knows enough to avoid that. we've been hearing
Yeah.
religiously from Sheila is that, and which makes perfect sense, if this eyelet is sticking above the surface and a scalloper fetches a dredge on it, it doesn't take long to sink your boat. So,
Well,
but this is conflicting.
if you believe the harbor master in Marion,
Mhm.
those islets are not sticking up.
Yeah. Amazing.
They're sunk.
But I think it was good most of the harbor.
Yeah.
Maybe not in Monomoy, the other places.
Maybe not in Nantucket.
Children's Beach, the main mooring fields, that whole
But
area.
nobody's scalloping there anyway.
Right.
So,
No,
I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer. I mean, but anyway.
And I think you could get more moorings. Not everybody would get more moorings, but yeah. Of course, in terms of the sale aspect of things, I mean, here it's a permit that you have to die, and you can't sell them. You can sell your yacht.
Well, now, he said, I've got the mooring regulations from Marion. It's kind of interesting. I mean, I don't want to take up time, but it's kind of interesting. It's the same thing. The town controls the permit. But once you get a permit, the question is then, like here, you get a permit and you get a location and you drop your mooring, right? There, you get a permit for a location, and there's either there's either a mooring there or there isn't one there, a helix there or there isn't one there. If there is one there, then you have the option of sinking your own or buying it from the guy who used to be there.
No, I was talking more in terms of waiting list.
Oh,
Mm.
yeah.
Son's been on the waiting list for, I don't know how many years, I think it's like 103 or something. That's, like Harry Mine and,
I mean,
that happened around the same
So is
time.
he trailer?
Oh, no, he's got a 45, sale bonus. He's using mine, so it's my boat's in the yard.
Ah.
so, I would think that having sticks in the water in Nantucket where they come in close, on the outside of the channel it'll be fine, but on the inside of the channel, closer to like North Cambridge and over in Warren's Landing, that you would probably get a lot of griping if you had that many sticks bobbing in the water.
Yeah.
And I think that would be something you'd have to deal with. I mean, if there's no hook hanging out of the water and you can find it by GPS, it just
Well,
changes.
right now, if you go out and look at the harbor and you're on Washington Street and you look out past, between the town dock and Great Harbor
Right.
Yacht Club, you see a bunch of sticks.
Right.
It's not like it's a clean harbor.
Right.
Children's Beach is clean. I mean, the Children's Beach mooring area is clean, but why does it have to be clean?
Right. Right. Well, I mean,
Anyway.
Sheila and others could explain it better as
Yeah.
far as
There was just one other anecdote.
when they began to regulate, inspecting the moorings every 2 to 3 years, whatever it is now. You never saw them all being hauled out like you do today. And I see the mooring handlers go by my house, and they've got 20 moorings on a trailer behind the truck, and they're full of mud and still dripping as they're going by.
Yeah.
And they look awful just because they're so oxidized, so
Mhm,
rusted.
mhm.
And is that because they're being hauled out, exposed to the air all winter long, going back in? It seems like a lot of work and also a lot of disturbance to the bottom to continually haul them out.
Just one other
It's a
anecdote.
mystery to me. It doesn't really make all that much sense.
Well, I mean,
but-
there is a cottage industry there that, to the extent that you suggest anything different, they may feel threatened, and the answer, as they said it in Marion, it isn't as if you don't have people servicing the moorings. You have probably just as many people servicing the moorings. They just service them in a different way.
Right.
And I bet that doesn't cost any less.
It
To get a
seems
diver to go
indicate
down and
it's not.
replace your chain?
But, this picture, and I thought I sent this out, maybe I didn't. But this is it's a 110-page review of different moorings. But what they're talking about is
Oh, is this the
that-
Australian study?
Yeah, they say that, you know, if your complaint is that there's hooks hanging out of the water, your mooring, you know, you can actually unscrew where the eye is and put another cap on it, which, you know, eliminates that concern about being dragged.
Well, Sheila has mentioned the caps also.
So, you know,
You did have caps in the regulations, and
right.
you edited it out.
Because I've been,
Were they having a problem with the caps?
that eliminates that
securing?
discussion of I don't want to
Yeah.
get caught on the hook.
Yeah.
And that doesn't look like something that's going to fall off real easy.
No.
Did I send you that on?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, I got it. I've got about 300 pages of that.
Right, yeah.
Mooring
I mean,
articles.
No.
No.
And I think I
complaining.
got to have
need
about
them all.
100 and a half, but
Amazing information.
Yeah, and I passed them along to Cormac,
Yeah.
who said that's a very interesting study.
Really. Well,
Can I just give you one more anecdote?
please.
The Helix mooring, he said when they first did it back in the 90s, everybody was skeptical of how strong they were. So they sunk one in the ground right next to the harbor master's shed or office or whatever it is. And then they took a crane, alternately a crane and a big tractor trailer to see if they could move it, and neither one could move it. The crane couldn't pull it out of the ground, and the tractor trailer couldn't pull it out of the ground.
and these guys in their study yanked one out that had been in for 10 years, and it looks like it was dipped in concrete from the amount of stuff that accreted around it. I mean, you couldn't even see the screw anymore. It just looked like a solid piece
Core.
of concrete right into the ground that became the anchor. So there's,
Okay.
you know, there's all these studies that really,
That's interesting stuff. If you could print out some of those pictures, that would be kind of.
Sure.
And I'd like to continue.
Sure, sorry.
Discussion on moorings. You know,
I think
the
it's
next
an
meeting
important
for
topic.
sure. Not just for cruise ship moorings, but moorings in general. Any other comments?
Mm-mm.
Filming of our meetings. I guess I just wanted to, I think the consensus was at the last meeting, we're all for it.
Yeah, as long as
You know,
we're,
for or against, whatever, yeah, I mean,
I
I'm
mean,
not opposed. Let's put that.
I'm not opposed.
You all read the memo?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I think it would be, it could be a positive thing for the board.
Probably just
So we'll move forward with doing that. New business. Bill Blount's not here, so the local commercial fishing vessel survivor will continue to wait on him. Fritz?
Yeah, Fertilizer Advisory Committee, I just want to give you a quick report on where we are. They had a very successful fertilizer licensing class sessions in the springtime, and then what that did is that evolved into how do we do this on a repeat basis, and from grants that they've received from the town and others, the Nantucket Television is going to film either 5 to 7 of these classes, so that in the future people can come in and view the film that shows how you calibrate a fertilizer, how you read a fertilizer bag, how you do all the steps necessary, what you need to learn to get a license. So it'll be in Spanish and in English. Roberto does the voiceover for the Spanish. The next item, so that'll be happening. The next item is going to be a focus on pesticide use and licensing, people who use pesticides. So does anybody anybody who uses a pesticide other than a homeowner has to have a license. And so
That's terrific.
you get a lot of gardeners, I won't call them landscapers, sort of just gardeners. So you got a gardener who's spraying stuff around in boxes, have to be licensed. So they're going to make that a little bit more, the industry down here a little more aware of what's required, and then do the same thing with the use of pesticides. What kind of pesticides, how you use them, what's the proper use.
Are they defining the pesticides?
Yeah. I think that's
Are
decided.
they labeled names?
Yeah.
Not just.
Yeah, so there's been a discussion of whatever the generic brand of, what's the big plant
Roundup.
killer, Roundup. Yeah, there's, and how it's safe and how it's not safe, how to use it and not use it. The last item I just mentioned is they've been finally seem to be making an inroad. Island Lumber is carrying some now Nantucket regulation compliant fertilizer products. And apparently Marine Lumber has agreed that they will begin to carry some. Neither one to the exclusion of things that are non-compliant, but at least they will carry the compliant. And the discussion is now with the retailers.
I'm sorry, I hate to cut you off, but neither one, it sounded like you said both of them are still carrying non-compliant Island Lumber also?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they have non-compliant stuff, but they are carrying compliant stuff.
All right.
And the manufacturers, I guess you call them, the distributors, manufacturers are indicating an awareness to develop product that is for the Nantucket market, which would be helpful. There are still a couple of retailers, I'll call them retailers, sales points that refuse to deal with the issue of compliant versus non-compliant. Apparently consider it an infringement of their freedom to sell whatever they want to sell. So I think there is some progress being made in terms of what's going to be available, and there will be some attempt to see whether the local will carry literature for things. So, for instance, the discussion is I'll just use Marine Lumber. What Marine Home Center might be willing to do for the person who walks in and says, I want Scott's 4-step fertilizer program. And whether they'll be willing to say this is compliant and this isn't compliant. Again, the person has the freedom to buy whatever they want to buy if they're a homeowner. But perhaps with the education and people being an awareness, the fertilizer committee may be through the town trying to provide some literature in terms of actual product that's compliant and not compliant, more consumer education. So I think they're doing, the people who are involved in the committee are very serious and very diligent. They are also aware that I didn't realize how many landscapers there are in Nantucket. Hundreds.
All you gotta do is go to the dump on it and get them
Hundreds
done.
of landscapers.
My line is 2 women, a rake, and a truck, and they're a landscaping company.
And a leaf blower.
Right.
So,
Which
but
you don't
anyway.
need as much around here, but.
So I think the fertilizer, at least on the landscaper, on the commercial level, I think there's progress being made, and I would, for the half a dozen people that are involved directly on the committee, I would say that I commend them on their willingness to self-police.
Yeah, I think that happens more and more. That self-policing is a good way.
Yeah.
And as an anecdote, the young man in the fertilizer section at Island Lumber is very knowledgeable. And I asked him about something, and he said, we don't have it, but we can get it for you. And it was an organic
Mm-hmm.
pesticide for
Yeah.
bugs, and 2 weeks later I got it. And remarkably enough, it was only $2 more
I
than
can't remember what
Amazon,
his
and I
name
was
is. He's a good
willing-
guy.
Yeah, and I was willing to pay the extra $2 over Amazon just because they were making the effort. And I've done that with quite a few things. You know, I really respect them for that. They've really done a great job.
I did the same thing on my garden. I asked him, what kind of fertilizer, what can I put down that isn't, if I want to be compliant? And he basically the same thing, pointed me to an organic, couple of choices that you
Right.
might have,
Yeah.
organic. And he said,
I think they've gone in big time on this, and they have everything else, but they will attempt to steer you.
if you ask, they'll help.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a good thing on their behalf. They deserve kudos for that.
Well, that's my report.
Fritz, just one thing on the pesticide. I mean, I find it very interesting, for example, the information you've gotten from there and what Joe's just brought up here on his phone. As far as pesticides go, I mean, there's studies being done out there, like independent studies on Roundup and its effects, and its lifespan and in the ground. Will any of that, you think, be introduced into this?
Yeah, I think, the fertilizer committee is part of the department, under the Department of Health. And Roberto is very serious about it. I think he's a pretty diligent public servant in terms of the health department and what they want to see happen. The people on the committee, for instance, what's his name? God, I can't remember. The greenskeeper at Nantucket Golf
Yeah,
Club
he's really
is on the committee. He's very knowledgeable. He's reading all kinds of stuff. And a couple of the other landscapers. Massarelli is pretty knowledgeable. Shampoo, pretty knowledgeable. The group of guys that I am by far the dumbest guy sitting there. I'm there because I'm a representative and I just listen and ask naive questions, which they're somewhat tolerant of. But, I'm just, answer the question. So I look at it as a citizen who's interested in it. I'm pretty satisfied with the efforts they're making. I guess that's all I can say. Gives me some reassurance, so I think everybody ought to have some reassurance.
Well, that sounds good. Thanks for that information and keep us updated. I'm very interested to know, how the pesticide into that. And also, you were mentioning.
That's just really beginning. We started it a couple of months ago, talking about what we were going to do, and then the effort so far is just to get these things filmed, so that so that they can be used repeatedly and are effective for the licensing classes, and then they can move on to something else. Moving on, the pesticides is the next item. Pesticides and trying to reach out to I'll call it the gardening community, the gardeners as opposed, in addition to the landscapers, and including trying to get a couple of those people on the committee as well.
You mean like the garden club and people like that?
No, it's primarily women, I think, that are, people doing gardens, stuff like that.
I would just think that, the garden club would be another group of people to get to, because they're such
Education.
an active
Education.
group of women, and they're involved in this, and
It's a good point.
they could get a lot of science, and they can disseminate it amongst
Yeah, the
themselves,
public-
which I
the
think
public
would be
education
really,
aspect
really
of it.
good.
Good point.
Yeah.
Very good point.
Because
I'll bring that up.
I've tried to, I won't say our property is organic, but I will tell you that I endeavor to use nothing that I consider toxic. You know, and it's a tough road to hoe around here, especially when it comes to funguses in the summer.
Mm.
It's a bear out in Nantucket because of the mists and the moisture. But you can do it. Just requires more work. It's not a one shot for a month. It's once a week. You know, it can be done.
I thought it would be nice for us to look over our goals and objectives that we've kind of, I don't know, haven't looked at in a long time. I don't know if you guys still have these that Fritz printed up a while back. He separated us all out in our ideas and goals and objectives.
I don't think I was here for that.
I've got it all on my computer, so
Yeah.
I can just
Will you just send it out?
I can
again?
just
I'd like to see
download it and forward the last thing we had. The last one I did was kind of a spreadsheet where we're even putting in kind of
Yeah.
who was dealing with that, because in some cases, some of those topics were being, like fertilizer.
Yeah.
Like the fertilizer committee was formed and stuff like that. So I'll be happy to just send it out.
Just to start out next year,
Yeah.
if you could send out the latest that you had compiled.
Yeah.
Because I thought that was a nice grid of,
Yeah.
of all of our ideas and you know, review it over the holidays and I'll give you all a call
Send
before
it out
our next
tomorrow.
meeting and see what we ought to bring
Yeah.
up and talk about and review.
I looked at it not too long ago. Again, although you might say, geez, what have we kind of like done, you know, individually? I mean, not in, you know, is this committee, you know, other than talk about some of these issues? If you look at a lot of the issues and then say, what has been done
Yeah.
by lots of
Right.
different organizations,
Right.
you get a pretty good feel that most of those issues are being addressed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's all on our shoulders,
Right.
and we haven't been able to motivate a lot of people to do things specifically at a meeting or something like that. But collectively, through the town, land council, Shellfish Association, all of those organizations focusing on it, it seems to be like it's coming, you know, we're closing in on a lot of the issues. Bottom paint would be probably an exception to that.
Right, right.
Nobody's focusing on that. But,
Yeah.
but you know, you can just look through it and then just
Well,
sort of say,
I always team that up with every boat creates a certain amount of pollution.
yeah,
And it really starts with the bottom, and then you go from there. So, I mean, you paint your boat, they say, the faster you get it in the water after you paint it, the better. And I've seen guys put their boat in the water and you see it, just a ring of the paint around the boat as they're launching it, so.
we got one launch man at the yacht club who is a firm advocate of don't bother putting bottom paint on your boat.
Yeah,
Just scrub it.
yeah. Yeah, I used to wax mine, I never painted it, but I trail it all the time.
Yeah.
There'd be weekends I'd leave it in, but
Yeah.
never stayed in all summer, so.
Yeah, because if you don't run your boat and it's sitting on the mooring, but yeah, by the end of August, it's going to have a lot of junk on the bottom.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what you put on the bottom.
I don't know about that. Because I know that
Change in I've got harvest. Phasing towards full stroke.
Right, right, yeah. Yeah, that's a good question.
Cycles.
Always buying anything.
But I mean, you can't not put a lot of gas in the water unless
Right.
you work.
Yeah.
there's always a slick behind my boat.
They're at, most motors have been sold at cost. I'm just. Most of that,
Good question.
Do they
Yeah.
even sell
Hmm?
two-strokes?
You what?
Do they even sell two-strokes anymore? I don't think
the
so.
smaller ones.
Of the small ones, maybe. Mine is a 20-year-old two-stroke. It's about to die.
I love my new one. I mean, it goes forever.
I actually just bought one.
I mean, the efficiency, the gas efficiency is unbelievable.
Sucks.
About 150
this thing, you get in it, you turn it, it's
Yeah.
gone. Two people around me who have four strokes, they're kicking, they gotta worry about it. It's about simplicity.
Yeah.
You know, a four-stroke basically looks like the inside of, you know, the hood on your car. You know, mine, I can pull the plugs myself. I do
Yeah.
all kinds of happy shit with it.
Yeah.
This is,
Any items would you like to recap
No.
for the next meeting? Motion to adjourn,
second. So moved, Brad.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I will not be here for the next meeting. I'm having surgery that day, so.
January 2nd.
Yeah.
Oh.
I will not be here either. I'm also in Boston having a tune-up.
All right, well,
I'm
maybe
having my
our
cataracts
next
done.
meeting will be January 16th?
Yeah.
You know, that's
We'll
probably.
check with other people, but, you know, I mean, I think we said before, I think somebody, who else said they might?
The quorum is what, 4? Well, that could be tough
Yeah,
right now,
Yeah.
if 2 of us are gone.
yeah.
Well, yeah,
That's okay.
because Ken is probably not gonna be around.
I think
No
not.
update. no
And,
update.
if Bill's not around,
Right.
so that's 4.
And it's too bad, because I'd really like to ask Bill some questions about sustain his business.
So maybe.
Do we don't wanna just make a decision?
Yeah, I mean, you know,
Yeah,
if you know in advance.
I'll be around.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. If I feel we're not gonna have a quorum, I'll get in touch. Yeah, Peter and I will talk about that.
Yeah. Well, then you'd have to send out the notice. You don't have to do all the notice, the
Yeah.
posting and everything else.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because Bill-
Everyone have a Merry Christmas.